In this episode, a fruit picker is trapped in an apple tree as two hungry Komodo dragons circle the trunk below. After spending hours stuck in the tree under the blistering sun, he slips and falls directly on top of the two man-eating dragons. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying story of Muhamad Anwar, eaten alive by two Komodo dragons. Welcome to Final Affliction. Komodo dragons are the stuff of nightmares, with a mouth full of sharp, serrated teeth to tear flesh from bone, a long forked tongue that can smell its prey from 5 miles away, and a venom that causes the victim to internally bleed to death. They are one of the most feared reptiles on the planet. There are thought to be only 4,000 Komodo dragons left in the wild. They inhabit just 5 Indonesian islands, which are Komodo, Rinca, Flores, Gili Dasami, and Gili Motong. They are renowned as carrion eaters, tucking into carcasses and consuming up to 80% of their body weight in one sitting. However, when the opportunity arises, they are also exceptional ambush predators. Typically, they prey on small animals such as invertebrates, birds, reptiles, eggs, and monkeys. Larger dragons will eat wild boar, goats, deer, horses, and even water buffalo. They have a disturbing habit of digging up graves and feeding on the corpses beneath. This has led locals to bury their dead in clay soils and pile rocks on top to prevent the lizards from gaining access to their loved ones. It is no wonder the Komodo dragons have such a fearsome reputation. It is what drives tourists to the Indonesian islands, the chance to see the largest and heaviest lizards in the world. In March 2009, 31-year-old Muhamad Anwar set out to pick fruit on the island of Komodo. Nobody knows for sure what happened leading up to the attack, but the following story is thought to be the most probable scenario of what happened to him on that fateful day. It was a warm, sunny day, and as Muhammad walked through the groves, his scent was picked up by a pair of Komodo dragons that were on the prowl. Due to habitat destruction, Komodo dragons are becoming increasingly more problematic for humans as they search further to find food. Amongst the fruit trees, the giant lizards flicked their forked tongues in and out. The chemoreceptors on the roof of their mouths alerted them to a meal several hundred meters away. Silently, they closed in. Their heavy footsteps were silent in the tall grass. Their heads swayed from side to side. Muhammad was unaware of his impending doom. Conflicting reports suggest that he was either working in the fields as a fruit picker or he was trespassing. Komodo National Park's general manager, Franciscus Harum, said that it was forbidden to go into that area of the park and that Muhammad was a fisherman who had strayed from the beach to search for fruit. There was a reason the area was forbidden to enter. It was home to a large population of Komodo dragons and was deemed too dangerous for the general public. But others believed he was working in one of the fruit groves there, picking apples to provide for his family. In Komodo, besides the tourism industry, fruit picking and fishing provide the main income for locals. Whatever his reason for being there, Muhammad was about to find himself in a sticky situation. The 31-year-old climbed the apple tree. He hauled himself up through the branches, reaching the choicest fruit at the top of the tree and placing it into his bag. He was about to climb back down and climb another tree when he spotted something on the ground. It was large, a flash of dark green and gray. He lowered himself down slightly, holding on with both his hands as he peered through the branches. Then his heart leapt in his chest as he realized he was surrounded by not one, but 2 Komodo dragons. They were enormous, weighing around 70 kilograms or 150 pounds, and stretching to 2.5 meters or 8.5 feet long. He watched intently as he contemplated his next move. He decided to wait it out. But the Komodo dragons weren't just passing by. They were there for him. He was their prey. The scent of the young man had enticed them from the tree line. They were searching for their next meal, and at last they had found it. One of them reared up on its hind legs and placed its front claws on the tree trunk. Muhammad felt the trunk shake under the weight of the lizard as it leaned against it, supported by its thick, muscular tail. He knew they could climb trees. There was very little a Komodo dragon couldn't do. Not only could they ascend trees, but they were excellent swimmers, could run at speeds of up to 12 miles per hour, and females could reproduce without involving a male. To Muhammad's relief, however, this one was too heavy to climb up the tree and lowered itself back down to the ground. But he was stuck. The animals below him circled the tree. He watched them, observing their characteristic lumbering gait. Every now and then they would pause and look upwards, eyeing the young man with interest. The tongues flicked in and out of their mouths. He could see their armored, scaly skin and their powerful tails. He cried out, hoping that some of the other workers would hear him, but nobody answered. He was torn. Should he make a run for it, or should he try and wait it out? As the heat of the day drained him and sweat poured from his face, he shuffled uneasily on the branch he was perched on. With only apples to keep him hydrated, he knew his options were limited. He readjusted his grip on one of the branches, but as he did so, his sweaty palm slipped on the smooth bark of the apple tree, and he lost his footing. Muhammad went crashing to the ground. He was whipped and smacked by the other branches as he plummeted downwards. The wind was knocked from his lungs as he landed on the hard ground. Then they were upon him. Muhammad had no time to get up. He immediately felt the hungry meat-eaters tearing into his flesh. It was like a feeding frenzy. Each of their mouths contained 60 serrated teeth designed for tearing through meat and causing severe damage and exsanguination. The force of their bite could break a man's leg in two. They were merciless. At last, their long wait for a meal was over. The two dragons hissed as they attacked their victim. Muhammad cried out in pain. He desperately tried to fight the lizards off, but their frenzied attack gave him no room to maneuver. Eventually, Theresia Tawa heard the desperate cries for help and ran through the fruit grove. When she reached Muhammad, she was shocked at the sight. Blood poured from the young man's body. He was thrashing about on the ground, kicking and punching and screaming. He was fighting back as hard as he could. Theresia threw stones at the giant lizards and yelled at them. They paused momentarily and looked up. Theresia screamed at them again, and they scuttled off into the undergrowth. She rushed to Muhammad's side and cradled his head in her hands. Large, gaping wounds had been torn by their teeth. The venom was now coursing through his body, preventing the blood from clotting. Soon, muscle paralysis, hypothermia, shock, and loss of consciousness would set in. Muhammad needed urgent medical attention if he had any chance of survival, but hospitals were few and far between on the Indonesian islands. He was carried to the shore and lifted into a fisherman's motorboat. They sped across the water to a medical clinic on the nearby island of Flores. Tragically, Muhammad died on arrival at the clinic from massive blood loss before doctors were able to save him. This tragic incident was one of many increasing attacks across the islands, only adding to the fear that surrounds the endangered reptiles. Only the month before, a dragon climbed up a ladder and into the house of a park ranger, mauling him whilst he slept. Although he survived, it was a harrowing experience. The previous year, 5 tourists were swept onto the island of Rinca after being caught by strong currents whilst diving. Arriving on the soft sand in the dead of night, they didn't realize that their ordeal was just beginning. As sunlight emerged, they came face to face with a Komodo dragon and spent 5 days fending it off whilst waiting for rescue. And a couple of years before that, an 8-year-old local boy was pounced upon by a dragon whilst playing football with his friends. Sadly, he didn't live to tell the tale. An increasing number of encounters are thought to be due to the loss of the Komodo dragon's habitat. As more of it is cleared to make way for agriculture and housing, the giant lizards have no choice but to search elsewhere for food. Living in such close proximity to people is bound to end in conflict. They are drawn to the rural communities by the promise of food. Domesticated goats and chickens are easy meals for the lizards, and although humans aren't their typical prey, they will attack if they feel threatened or if they are really, really hungry. The Komodo dragons who attacked Muhammad that day were apparently just that, leading to his terrifying final affliction.